style. It's going to be less of a sheer, more of a discussion because if I'm being honest, I don't know so much about Akdamus. Um, Akdamus just as an introduction. I'll introduce them and then hopefully you guys all have Sidurim. If not, I think you should be able to find text online if you don't have a sitter with you. But then we'll go through the text itself. But Akdamus is typically said, the minhag is to say it Shavuos night in the morning. If you're awake, a lot of people fall asleep in Akdamus because most people have no idea what it's saying, and it gets a little boring if you don't know what you're saying. Um, the earliest source in the research that I had the time to do, it said it comes from the Maharil, that he mentioned the minhag to say it, and the minhag was to actually say it after the first pasuk, meaning minhag was to start the laning, read the first pasuk of laning. It's just about Har Sinai, right? And stop after that first pasuk, and say the Akdamus. So, but that is not. Most people don't have the minhag to do that. Most people actually say it before a laning. Oh, Papa, what's the minhag in Staten Island? They say it. They do the first pasuk, or they do it before the laning. You gotta have to unmute yourself.
They 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 do the first pasuk and then they read Akdamus.
Oh, okay. So they do the first pasuk and they read Akdamus. Abba, is that the minhag in the yeshiva? What's the minhag? So
No, we do the Akdamus and then we read.
first Akdamus and then you read. Okay. So I think that's the more common minhag. I think that's the more common minhag. I think in Breuer's by YU they also do the first pasuk, but that's because that's how it's mentioned. That's the first source of the minhag. But somehow I guess the minhag changed to say it before the laning. And so that's basically the source. There are other sources as well that mention this minhag besides the Maharil. I think Sephardim don't say it. That's what I heard, and also because in the minhage of worms, that's where Rashi is from, worms. They didn't say it because one time when they were saying the Akdamos, the Chazan died right after he started saying it. So they're like, we have to stop saying this. Okay, but Ashkenazim we still say it. Who was it written by? It was written by so I have a footnote in the article Siddur that is composed by Rabbi Meir ben Yitzchak, and a lot of people say that this was actually the Rebbe of Rashi. Rashi always quotes Rabbi Meir, so many people claim that this is actually Rashi's Rebbe. We'll notice that the content, that the actual words of the Akdamos are written in Aramaic, which is probably the biggest reason why people are falling asleep during them, because we don't speak Aramaic anymore. But at one time that was the language that everyone spoke. So why is it written in Aramaic? Many poskim explain because it's like similar to, they used to have the Metorgamon for laning, that when they lane, they'd have one guy translate the laning into Aramaic so that everyone would understand. So same thing here. That's why it's in Aramaic. Also, this could be also based similar to what Tosfos says in Brachos, that Tosfos explains that Kaddish is Aramaic, so that the answer that Tosfos quotes is that Kaddish is written in Aramaic, so that Malachim should not understand it, and so they shouldn't make a big fuss about it in Shemayim. If you have an art scroll sitter, it's on page 760, 761. It should be with the tefillos of Shavuos. Or you could look if you look in the beginning of your sitter, it'll probably tell you where it is. It's in the Shavuos Seifers, and it's Shavuos Tefillos, and it's called Akdamos with Aleph Kuf Daled Mem Vav Taf Akdamos. But that's the answer to Tosfos. That's what Tosfos quotes about Kaddish, but Tosfos says it doesn't make any sense, right? That Malachim, he says that Kaddish, just to repeat, Kaddish said in Aramaic, so Malachim shouldn't understand, make a big fuss about it in Shemayim. So Tosfos doesn't like that answer. He says really it's so that everyone can understand it, which makes it's a little easier to understand. Now, two more points before we get into the words. So this is a lot of people quote this as a source. I didn't see this, and the only reason I'm saying this because I didn't see this in my sitter, but in the time that I had, the time that I prepared, I heard this story twice by two different people, and it's a crazy story. So if there's something that, if you want to keep people awake Shavuos morning, you can tell them this crazy story. Maybe that's part of it. They say this is the source for the Akdamus, that the story goes that there was this Christian priest who used to study magical powers. And this is by the way, this source is the El Yerab. It's not just some guy, it's not a fairy tale, it's El Yerab. We base a lot of halacha off the El Yerab. So he brings this as a source, that there was this Christian priest who used to study magical powers. And so there was one Jewish guy who wanted to study magical powers with the Christian priest. Okay, fine. So he's studying with him, it's going very well. Problem, he's learning magic, great. And then what happened is that they were doing these magic powers, I don't know, and he saw these creatures that came out, and he started to get very scared because of these creatures. They looked like I don't know, I guess they were Dementors from Harry Potter, right? That's what it sounds like. So he thought he was going to die, so he cried out, Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad, thought he was about to die. So the priest, right, the magic teacher, he gets upset because he's like, what, you thought I was going to let you die? And so he got so upset at this guy, he killed him, and he went around killing all these Jews. So the Jews in the town, they were all dying. They were very scared. So they went to the king of the town, and they said, you got to make this magic guy stop. So the king said, what are you looking at me? I'm also terrified of the magic guy. So the king, and eventually, whatever, they got to the magic priest, the Christian priest, and he said, I'm not going to stop till you find a guy to debate with me in the magic powers. So they basically all decided it was this one guy, and this guy basically defeated the priest, the magic priest, and because of that, they composed this song. So take with that what you want, but that is another source. And maybe that's I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, to be honest, but that is another source. But finally, just to introduce the actual content of the words of the Akdamus, is that it's basically the beginning. We start by requesting from God the ability to praise him. We're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribono Shel Olam, to give us permission to even praise him. And then we finish by talking about the greatness of Klal Yisrael, that we were even more powerful than the Malachim, and we finish by speaking about even the Yemos Mashiach. So that is the outline of the Akdamus. Does anyone have any comments? Anyone heard anything else about Akdamus before we get to the words? Feel free to unmute or share anything, because so far that's all I know about Akdamus. Okay.
It's sort of remarkable. I love the dramatic notion that we stop at the after one sentence or something like that, and then recognize the setting that we're in, it's being delivered to us, and how I think it's remarkable.
Yeah, that's it's a good point. That, I mean, even if it's not our minhag, but the fact that was the minhag, after one line they would stop and say this. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So I have the ArtScroll, so I'm gonna read it with the ArtScroll's translation and footnotes. If anyone has a different sitter that they're using and it says anything different, feel free to share. And the ArtScroll writes as an introduction that composed by Rabbi Meir ben Yitzchak, right, which we mentioned. Akdamus may well be Judaism's best known and most beloved piyut. In its 90 verses written in terse, difficult Aramaic, Akdamus leads the reader through the great heights and depths of the mystical understanding, from a description of God's creation of the world to a close look at the splendor of the world to come, from the angels' praise of the Almighty to the greatness and the suffering of the Jewish people. The first 44 verses form a double acrostic of Aleph Beis, while the first letters of the remaining verses spell the author's name and blessing. Meir Be'er Rabbi Yitzchak Yagdil B'Torah Masim Tovim Amin B'Chazak Yemetz. Each verse concludes with the suffix Taf Aleph, the last and first letters of the Hebrew alphabet, to signify that the cycle of Torah study is endless, and that as soon as one completes the Torah, he should begin anew. Okay, so that is the introduction. So now let's try the words. Does anyone want to start by reading the words? Do they have a translation? Shea, you want to do it? You have a sitter with English?
Yeah.
Okay, so please.
Okay. Akdamus, Milin. Introduction.
Akdamus me and do the tune.
So that's the tune that we use. You could use a tune, that'd be great. Or if you don't want, you could just read it. It's okay.
Read it. All right. Akdamus, Milin. An introduction to the words. Sharius Shusa. And commencement of my speech. Avla Shakilna Harmon Urishusa. First, I will take authorization and permission.
Okay, that's the first sentence. I have one footnote that says, Milin, the words, the 10 commandments, which are to be read after the recital of this poem. The first four verses are the poet's request for permission from God, from his listeners, to explain the Torah's words. Does anyone have anything else on there? No? Okay, so seems like we're just asking for permission so far. That's it so far. Keep going, Shia.
Bivave tre uslas de eftach benakushasa. In sections of 2, in 3 parts, I shall commence with trembling.
Okay. So now I have here that the poem is divided into 2 major themes: God's greatness and Jewish faith in God and obedience to the Torah, despite the oppression and ridicule. And the 3 subordinate themes: A, the angels praising God; B, the Torah's greatness; and C, the reward awaiting the righteous for upholding the Torah. Okay, so I guess that's sort of what we're speaking at here. Okay, keep going.
Bivare divare vitare ade akishishusa. With the permission of the creator of the world and its protector until its old age. Kuran almin le villa sipek virshusa. Strength eternal is his, for which there is no adequate description. Vil Eloi rikie kne kol forshasa. Even if parchment were the heavens and quills all the forests.
Keep going. I think it's part of all like the same.
Diorilo yame v'chomi kinishusa. Even if on ink were the oceans as well as all the gathered waters. The dire are safre rashme rashvasa. Even if the inhabitants of the earth were scribes and recorders of initials. Hador mare shemaya v'shalit v'yabeshta. For the majesty of the master of heaven and the ruler of earth.
Stop there. So I think that what it's saying, at least I'm saying it so far, similar to what we say in Nishmas, right? That when we say Nishmas, that we basically mention the idea that there's no amount of praise, right? Even if you took as much praise as possible, we compare ourselves to deers, right? To all the animals, all these different things in nature, and we basically say that there is no amount of praise which is enough for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's just too much, right? It's so in a similar fashion, right? We're saying if all the oceans were ink, if all the earth inhabitants were scribes and recorders of initials, the glory of the master of heaven, the ruler of earth, in isolation he established earth, and control this expansion with constraint. That none of it is enough. And this says here that even if the heavens were parchment, the next three verses are a parenthetical elaboration on God's glory. Even were unlimited resources available, it would nevertheless be impossible to describe fully God's greatness, which is, I think, definitely fitting. And it says about and Virashame Rishvasa, and recorders of initials, were all the world's inhabitants scribes writing only the initials of chapters depicting God's greatness, it would still be impossible to record all its praises. And it says about Hadar, glory, the master of heaven, ruler of the earth, the glory. The poet proceeds to speak of God's greatness after having stated that an adequate description is impossible, right? We're saying it's impossible to fully describe God. Nevertheless, we're still going to try our best to do so. Okay, and he said that and in isolation, he established the earth and controlled its expansion. So now this is really the beginning of the description of God's glory, that he established the earth by himself, controlled its expansion with constraint. So that they mentioned the Gemara Chagiga teaches that the first rock of the earth proceeded to expand until it reached the size God desired. Thereupon he halted its growth, meaning God controlled, God made it so that nature worked to perfection, so that it was able to be an earth that we could actually inhabit. And the now continues, the poem continues. Shia, you want to keep going? Does anyone else want to take over? Okay.
Sorry. If I can go back and just make one small point.
Oh yes, please, David.
If the oceans were ink, that's in the Quran. It says, if all the trees on earth were pens in ocean, and 7 more oceans were ink, yet these would not be suffice to record the words of God. God is majestic and all wise. So it's there's an allusion, a similar allusion in the Quran that that we could not replicate what God does.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, let's keep going. So now we're praising God. We could honestly, I think we could just do it in English. I think it will flow a little better if we just do it in English. The Aramaic is very difficult. So in isolation, he established the earth, controlled expansion with constraint. He perfected it without fatigue and without weariness, and with a letter slight and lacking substance. So they quote here, with a letter slight, God created the world as effortlessly as a person pronounces the letter hey, which requires but an exhalation of breath. And it's maybe interesting that that's the way that they describe how God effortlessly created the world, because God created the world with Dibur, that he spoke, right? That's how God created the world. So therefore it's as effortlessly as we would say, for us to just say the sound hey, or to say the letter hey. That's how easy it was for God to create the world. He readied all his work in those 6 days. Then the splendor of his majesty ascended upon his fiery throne. A host of thousands, and 10 of thousands serve him. So now I think so we start off by praising God. Now we're talking about the angels, that the host of thousands and thousands. So the article says a host. The next 16 verses describe angels and their awe in praising God. And so I'm not sure exactly why we are praising these angels, but it's definitely part of tefillah that we do praise angels. And maybe it's also just as part of praising God, we're also going to praise the angels. So that's the next section here. It's in Ches, right? The second line in Ches, new ones flow forth every morning. How great is your faithfulness? So they explain hosts of angels are created daily to praise God only on that day. As it is stated, new ones are created every morning. the Gemara in Chagiga explains that new angels are created every single day to praise God. Also know that that angels were created mostly, well, almost all angels are created for one task. They're in this world, they just have one task. And so that's why it says that. That's why it could also be that a new one is created every single day. So anyways, I'll tell you a story that I just heard today, that Rav Shai Schechter, he's Rav Schechter's son. So he told a story that I think he's from a shir from many years ago, but he told a story about his father, that his father's first day, Rav Schechter, so Rosh Shiva at YU, that first day that he was teaching, so he said he had a very, very hard time teaching. He said and after the first day he was ready to quit. He said that basically the Talmidim, they asked him questions all day. Finally, when he wanted to go, they still kept asking questions. He got home, he was so tired. In the morning, they more questions, everything. So he said he was ready to quit. And then he heard from Rav Gifter. I don't know exactly Rav Schechter's connection with Rav Gifter. It might be it's related to an in-law or something, but he heard from Rav Gifter that the Gemara says that anyone who's if your Rebbe is similar to a malach, if your Rebbe is similar to a malach, then that's the Rebbe that you follow. So that's what he told Rav Schechter. And so I think what the message that Rav Shai Schechter, Rav Schechter's son, how he explained it was that he said that because malach has one task, right? So he was telling Rav Schechter that if you want to be a Rebbe, if you want to teach people, you have to understand that you're gonna have less time for yourself. If you're just a regular guy, okay, then you can do what you need. But if you're Rebbe, if you're coming to teach people, you have to understand that you're almost like a malach in that way. That's almost like your one task, like an angel. So that was a nice story I heard today. Anyways, so we'll continue that we're talking about malachim. That new ones are created every single day. So in tests, even greater are the flaming seraphim. Those are specific type of angels, each one six-winged angel. They're called the seraphim. Until permission is granted them, they must be still in total silence. So
Roey, do seraphim appear any place else in our liturgy?
So we have a seraphim in tefillah that we say it in the morning before Shema, right? That what do we say? Yeah, Ofanim. I think we
Yod HaKodesh. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned the seraphim there too, the six-winged angels. So I think we mentioned it there too, and maybe in other parts of
Seraphim.
Seraphim. So there, yeah. So it's right there in tefillah. But okay, and then we say until permission is granted them, the angels are not permitted to offer their daily hymns to God until Israel has completed its psalms of praise. That they're waiting for us. The angels wait for us to give their praise. They wait for us to praise. Okay. Upon receiving permission from one another, in unison with no delay, they chant. So that upon receiving permission, they explain that the next 12 verses describe in minute detail the angel's daily recitation of Kedusha. Also, we mentioned that we say this also in davening, no snim reshuzel, that they give permission to each other before they start saying the Kedusha. So this is saying the same exact idea, that they wait for each other to say the Kedusha. And now the next 12 verses describe how the angels actually recite the Kedusha. So we'll read a few and then we'll stop here, but after that, but everyone should definitely go through it on their own. You see already how I don't know that we have anything else like this in tefillah, where we're just talking about these mystical ideas and it's very available to us to understand it. It's always more that we want to know about the malachim. It's always a question: what is this angel? What is it talking about? And the Akdamus is kind of explaining exactly what that is. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe they felt like they wanted to wake everybody up, and in the morning they knew everyone was going to be awake. They knew everyone's going to have a hard time staying awake this early in the morning, so they gave, what's the way to keep people up on Shavuos? People always come up with what's the best shear to give Shavuos morning. So people like to hear about exciting things. They like to hear about Olam Haba. They like to hear about angels, right? They're like, oh, that's the real exciting stuff. So maybe another reason why we say it so early in the morning is because trying to get people excited and awake. But that was, again, when they knew Aramaic. So now that we don't know Aramaic, it's very important to go through it and understand it, so that way when it actually comes, we can have that same excitement. So this is describing how they say the Kedusha. So like we said, upon receiving permission from one another in unison with no delay, they chant. This is the end of Yud, right? It goes, so far we're in letter by letter, and each letter has two sentences. So in Yod, this is the second one, that all the world is filled with his glory, after 3 times chanting holy, like the sound emanating from the Almighty, like the sound of torrential waters, Cherubim responding to Galgalim, exalting in a crescendo, seeming to the human eye like arrows flashing from a bow. To every place that they are sent, they hasten anxiously. They chant the blessing, blessed is his glory, in every spoken tongue, from the place where his presence dwells, which requires no searching. Roaring, the entire heavenly legion praises in trepidation. May his kingdom glow eternally from generation to generation. So that's the angels reciting the Kedusha. That's how it describes it. Yeah. So I think that's a good place to start, because after that, now the Pia looks like it kind of changes a little bit. It says schedule after the Kedusha service when the time is over. And then eventually it's going to start talking about, looks like now it's going to start talking about Klal Yisrael, how special Klal Yisrael is. And that's also important, but don't want to keep everyone on here for too long. But it's in the Sidurim. They explain it in English, and if you have an art scroll, it's got footnotes too. Does anyone else have any takeaways about the Akdamus? That's sort of how I feel about it. That it seems to be something that's just kind of out of the ordinary, a little exciting, interesting, and gives us a chance to tap into the mystical elements of the Torah and the Malachim, which is, we mention the Malachim, we talk about them every single day, but we don't really get the chance to actually understand what it's talking about. And so on Shavuos night, when we're Shavuos morning, when we're at the end of studying Torah, maybe this is the time where these doors are opened up a little bit for us to actually understand them. That's how I viewing the Akdamus. Does anyone have any comments? This is really my first time that I really had a chance to go through